Why some people never escape the middle class. Have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can start in almost the exact same position, same city, same education level, same opportunities, sometimes even the same income. Yet 20 years later, one person has built significant wealth, while the other is still living a middle-class life. Still working hard, still earning money, still paying bills, still hoping the next raid will finally change everything. And the question is, why? Why do some people slowly climb to financial freedom while others spend decades stuck in the exact same financial stage? Now, before we begin, this is not about blaming anyone, because the middle class works incredibly hard, in many cases harder than anyone else. The problem isn't effort. The problem is that many people are following a financial path that was designed for stability, not wealth. And there is a huge difference between the two, because stability helps you survive. Wealth gives you options. And if you don't understand that distinction, you can spend your entire life doing everything right while never actually getting ahead. Let's break it down. Part 1. The Great Middle Class Promise. For decades, people were taught a simple formula. Go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, work hard, buy a house, save a little money, retire someday. And for many years, that formula worked reasonably well. Not perfectly, but well enough. The problem is that the world changed. The cost of living increased, housing became more expensive, healthcare became more expensive, education became more expensive, and everyday life became more expensive. Yet many people continued following the exact same financial blueprint, working harder, hoping for raises, waiting for financial relief. But financial relief never fully arrived, and that's where the trap begins. Because the middle-class path often creates income without creating wealth. Part 2. The Income Illusion. One of the biggest misconceptions in personal finance is this. People think higher income automatically creates wealth. It doesn't. Higher income creates opportunity. What happens next determines everything. Because many middle-class households experience something called income expansion. Income goes up. Lifestyle goes up. Income goes up again. Lifestyle goes up again. A nicer apartment, a bigger house, a newer car, more subscriptions, more monthly obligations, more lifestyle upgrades. And before long, the additional income disappears. Not because they failed, because expenses expanded alongside earnings. This is why many people earning far more than they did 10 years ago still feel financially stuck. The income increased, but freedom didn't. Part 3. The Payment Trap. This is where things become really interesting. Because the middle-class path often creates income without creating wealth. Part 2. The Income Illusion. One of the biggest misconceptions in personal finance is this. People think higher income automatically creates wealth. It doesn't. Higher income creates opportunity. What happens next determines everything. Because many middle-class households experience something called income expansion. Income goes up. Lifestyle goes up. Income goes up again. Lifestyle goes up again. A nicer apartment, a bigger house, a newer car, more subscriptions, more monthly obligations, more lifestyle upgrades. And before long, the additional income disappears. Not because they failed, because expenses expanded alongside earnings. This is why many people earning far more than they did 10 years ago still feel financially stuck. The income increased, but freedom didn't. Part 3. The payment trap. This is where things become really interesting. There is a temptation, a very powerful temptation, to upgrade life immediately. A slightly bigger home, a nicer neighborhood, a luxury vehicle, more vacations, more convenience. And honestly, none of these things are inherently bad. The problem is timing. Because many people increase spending before building assets. They improve lifestyle first and wealth later. But wealth builders often reverse the order. They build assets first, then improve lifestyle gradually. And that difference compounds dramatically over time. Part 5. The asset gap. Here's something most people never realize. Middle-class people often spend decades working for money. Wealthy people spend decades buying things that work for money. That's a completely different game. One relies primarily on earned income. The other gradually builds income-producing assets. And assets are powerful because they continue creating value long after the initial effort. That's why escaping the middle class is usually not about working harder. It's about owning more. Owning investments, owning businesses, owning productive assets, owning things that have the potential to grow. Because eventually there comes a point where effort alone reaches limits. And that's where ownership starts mattering. A lot. Part 6. The security mindset. Now let's discuss something deeper, psychology. Because many middle-class financial decisions are driven by security. And that makes perfect sense. Security feels good. Security feels responsible. Security feels safe. The problem is that extreme security can sometimes reduce growth. People avoid risk entirely, avoid investing, avoid opportunities, avoid ownership, avoid calculated uncertainty. And while this protects against some losses, it can also limit potential gains. Now, this doesn't mean people should gamble, not at all. It means understanding that building wealth usually requires some form of calculated risk. Because financial growth rarely comes from staying completely comfortable forever. Part 7. The time problem. One of the most overlooked reasons people remain middle class is time. Not because they don't have enough, because they underestimate its power. Most people focus on what happens this month, this year, maybe the next few years. But wealth is often created over decades, not months, decades. And that means small decisions matter more than people realize. A little extra investing, a little less consumption, a little more ownership, a little more patience, repeated for 20 years. Those decisions can completely transform financial outcomes. But because the results are slow initially, many people quit before compounding has a chance to work. And that's one of the biggest tragedies in personal finance. Not starting too late. Stopping too early. Part 8. The real reason some people never escape. So let's answer the question directly. Why do some people never escape the middle class? It's usually not because they're lazy. It's usually not because they're unintelligent. And it's often not because they don't earn enough. It's because they spend decades optimizing for comfort instead of ownership. They focus on income instead of assets. They focus on monthly affordability instead of long-term wealth. They focus on appearing successful instead of becoming financially free. And none of those choices feel dangerous in the moment. That's what makes them so powerful. The consequences only become visible years later. Part 9. The moment the path changes. The good news is that the path can change, and it usually changes with one realization. The realization that income alone is not enough. Income is important, very important, but income is only the engine. Assets are what create leverage. Assets are what create growth. Assets are what create freedom. And once someone starts directing part of their income toward ownership instead of constant consumption, everything begins changing. Slowly at first, then faster, then dramatically. Not overnight, but inevitably. Because wealth building is not about one big breakthrough. It's about thousands of small decisions made in the same direction. Final thought. The middle class is not a prison, but it can become a permanent destination if people never change the rules they're playing by. Because the difference between staying middle class and building wealth is often not effort, it's allocation, where money goes, how money is used, and whether income is being converted into assets or simply converted into lifestyle. Because in the end, the people who escape the middle class are rarely the people who earn the most. They are often the people who consistently turn income into ownership. Year after year, decade after decade, until one day they wake up and realize something incredible. They are no longer working only for money. Their money has finally started working for them.